I believe that our identity, and self-esteem is really the determining factor around a lot of the decisions we make in life, like what we do for work, where we choose to live, who we choose to be in a relationship with. You know what I mean?
And you
our
can
friend
slice so many
circle.
different ways.
Yeah. It's like, but that part of it doesn't really ever get articulated of like, how do I view me? And how have I viewed me over the course of my life? And how has that evolved and pivoted and twisted and turned? And like, I just think it's like a conversation that provides a lot of perspective.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
We don't often think about it.
Yeah. And we also mostly don't know each other's stories.
Correct.
Like I have a story of you.
Correct. That might
That's
not
not
be
your story.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
And vice versa.
Yeah, right. Like we all do this with each other, but what is your story? And
that's
that's
so
a really
funny.
You know what I mean? So shit like that.
It's funny you mention that because there was a girl. I'm not really dating her, but there's some like romantic interest.
Yeah.
But I also know myself. I was like, you don't need me in your life right now. But a few weeks ago, she was laughing on the phone. She goes, Davion, I know you. Like I know. She predicted something. She said, I know you. Like I don't know what you. Mind you, I've known a woman for all of 3 months.
Okay.
And don't get me wrong, right? I'm a very expressive person. You probably figured that. So like I'm an open book typically. Like it doesn't take much. You ask a question, I'm pretty much going to answer it honestly. And I said, you know my archetype. I said, so I understand. I said, don't get me wrong. Like I understand the type of persona I can give off. Right. Which is why I also can understand why you might say that. And we left it there. And then last night, she asked me a question and she goes, what was your childhood like? Nothing to be too deep or anything. She said, and I answered the question with like relatively detailed answers. And she's like, her mouth is open like, I'm learning so much about you right now. And it's like, because it takes a lot to know somebody, man. Everybody is, I don't want to say posturing because I don't think that's necessarily true. But there's always a distance between who we are and who we want to be. Yeah. And a lot of times what you have from people who are, what I would say, in a place where they have the privilege to self-actualize or to think they're out of survival mode, a lot of times the person you see is a person we are aspiring to be and may not be the person we all quite are at the moment in time.
Yeah, like there's a performative aspect of society.
It sounds this.
And like just socializing in the world. Like
correct.
There is an aspect of it that requires presentation.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
But people can't get caught up in the presentation and think that that's the actual.
And we get caught up too. That's why people say don't believe your own hype.
Yeah, for sure.
Like,
but it's also really like refreshing when somebody who is self-aware gives you that type of an answer to a question. Like a friend of mine asked me, I was at a cafe with a friend today, and she asked me about how did I deal with my mom passing away.
How long was that?
Last year. Wow. And I had such a long tail answer for her because I've been in the cockpit of this thing for the entire time. Like I've been aware and present and seeing the connective tissues along the way that have all like impacted or informed or built my grieving process. You know what I mean? So I was able to answer that question because I actually sat in those thoughts and feelings. You know what I mean? And that's a refreshing thing for a lot of people to like actually get that type of answer back, like what you gave her back. You know what I mean? Even if it's something she likes or doesn't like, understands, doesn't fully understand, the fact that you had that much to give,
correct,
was like, oh shit.
And it's beneath the surface level, right? Everybody is always very surface level, which is fine. There's definitely a point to doing that, right? I'm not gonna say it's like it's moot. There's a point to doing that, but when it comes to actually trying to achieve goals, create relationships, nurture current relationships, your ability to have the self-awareness over who you are and how you identify in certain spaces is crucial. Yeah. And I would say kudos to you for saying that you spent the time actually incubated in how you were feeling. Because a lot of us, myself included, like my default for a lot of problems my entire life is to move and get out the way.
Yeah, I dig it.
even as extreme as me going to boarding school, right? There was a conversation. I went through Seeds, obviously. Shout out Seeds.
Shout out Seeds.
Seeds Access, Newark, New Jersey-based nonprofit, changing lives through access.
Word.
Right, so Seeds got me to different places where I was like, okay, like this is beyond me growing up in Newark, New Jersey.
Yeah.
Which in my mind, I always knew there was something better outside of it, but I never got to experience it firsthand. It was always through the TV screen.
Right.
But I say that to say, when I went to boarding school, one of the first times I saw my father, who's Caribbean, and you can input whatever stereotype about Caribbean men. I know him uniquely, but I also know he's a very, very much so an archetype.
Got you.
It was the first time I saw him cry, I think. Maybe the second. And it wasn't just about me going to boarding school, because it was around the time when my parents' relationship was on the rocks.
Okay.
And he's like, why do you want to leave? And I took a really big sigh and I said, well, at least I thought, I'm not even sure if I articulated it, but I know what I felt was there's nothing here for me anymore. Like you look outside, I see all the stuff that is not great.
Yeah.
And I was very susceptible as a kid. I think we all can be. And so I knew in my head, like, either I'm going to be around something that's going to make me thrive, or I'm going to be around some stuff that is not going to make me. And, I'm going to have 2 baby mamas and doing blase, which is no shade to those people that have it, but I saw it early enough. Yeah. And I ran. Like, I was fearful. So I think back to the coping mechanism, part of why I'm giving you kudos is I've just learned how to lean into some of the more uncomfortable and difficult feelings. Okay. And in those moments, while they don't feel great, I'm super thankful for them afterwards. Yeah. And I think it's a bit of a superpower.
It is. It really is. Yeah. Because nothing else is going to equip you with this awareness. Like, you have to turn your attention to yourself. You know what I mean?
It's a fact.
Like, nothing else is going to give it to you. Thank you for that. Appreciate that.
No, thank you. I think it's big, and I think I have a men's brand called Masculine Lies that I'm trying to grow. And that's part of like the fundamental steps of what we try to walk through, which is like, how do we debunk some of these artificial stereotypes that are given to men just by virtue of being born with a penis?
Yeah, word.
And one of the bigger ones is around this emotional availability topic, right? And so when you talk about identity, I actually have a tattoo on this arm. First tattoo I got in St. Lucia. My mom was going to kill me, but she wasn't on the island with me, so she couldn't do nothing. Okay. I FaceTimed her like that. I was probably like 22, 23. Okay. And it's in Latin, but the phrasing behind the Latin is, know yourself beyond the world's distractions. And that was important for me growing up. It was like my password to all my different email accounts and all that stuff. Not anymore. Don't hack me. But I made it imprinted on me because I was like, I'm so used to saying, hey, my name is Davion, I'm an investment banker, or my name is Davion, I'm a private equity professional. And a lot of us attach our identity to our jobs. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, that can be a part of like, maybe what makes you who you are. Yeah. But we over-index to that thing so much. Yeah. And so being able to kind of have a conscious reminder of like, well, who are you beyond that? Because candidly, like, our jobs, most of us, is a distraction. We're just trying to get the food, get the house. Exactly. Yeah. But that is, for a lot of people, is a distraction to what you can actually do in this world and contribute to this world, right?
Absolutely.
So I actually kind of consider it at times my job to be a distraction, not my identity.
I hear you. It's like the same thing with education. Like, education is a lot of times the impediment to learning because of how education is commoditized here. You know what I mean? Like,
I like that.
What you're not allowed to explore. Actually. What you're not allowed, you know what I mean? You're not allowed to be wrong. Rigid. Yeah, it's like wrong is failing in this system. You know what I mean? And like, that's not true of learning. That's actually not true or indicative of learning.
I agree.
And like, I feel the same way. I agree with you about.
Did you come up with that? Learning is often, education is often an impediment to learning. Yeah. Because it sounds like an oxymoron, right? Like the two shouldn't go together. Right. But it makes complete sense.
Yeah. But like in this system.
I'm going to take it.
Have it.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Done. So.
I have a lot of like cynicism around systems and institutions. Though.
I'm sure.
So, like, I'm sure I could spit some shit out like that
I'm
around
sure.
Like, a lot of these institutions.
That's awesome.
But to that point, I remember, like I tend to ask people, like at cocktail parties, I'm going to ask you,
Okay.
remove work. Mm-hmm. What are you good at?
I'm good at motivating people. Mm-hmm. I am good at looking at large amounts of information and being able to dissect it and take out the nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
I'm good at organizing people. Mm-hmm. I like community development, which kind of folds into the motivational aspect of it.
Okay.
And I'm good at articulating concepts to people and teaching. I think I'd make a really good teacher if I decided to go down that route one day.
I dig it. What do you credit that in particular to? Like
the last part of the whole thing?
Yeah, the last part, the articulation.
I think in my head when I was younger, I always had this picture of who I wanted to be.
Okay.
And in a lot of ways, I've become that person, which is a blessing.
Yeah.
But I was like, I want to be a businessman. I don't know what type of businessman, but it's probably, I was watching Pretty Lady.
Okay. Yeah.
Pretty Woman.
Pretty Woman, yeah.
Pretty Woman.
Yeah.
And granted, I didn't really know the full scope of him having a prostitute, right? But I was like, this man got money.
Right.
He's dressed well. He's respected. He articulates himself well. And then I would see things like The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and I used to idolize Will Smith.
Yeah.
And all of the men on TV that I saw would always be able to articulate themselves very well, and they would get high praise for it. So I think the genesis came from that. But my mom is also a teacher.
Okay.
And so watching her in the classroom, I also got into that.
Yeah.
Learning has always been like paramount on the checklist for me in terms of what she's taught me. So it made sense that like, okay, if education is supposed to be the way to, all these different great experiences and success, I would like to be able to also teach folks how to be quote unquote successful via education.
Yeah, it's interesting that you made two particular points in terms of what you're good at. One was taking in a lot of information, dissecting it, and then the articulation point. Articulation is like, I think largely underestimated or underappreciated because articulation and communication doesn't just mean that you can put these ideas into words. It means you put them into words that the listener can receive, right? Like you're painting pictures that they can see, you're giving them words that they can comprehend, and that may mean, in a certain sense, being like multilingual or code switching. Or like
100%.
All of these, you know what I mean? Like
I found out about code switching when I was 13. I was like, this is what I'm doing. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, right? But it's like it's an incredibly effective tool. You know what I mean?
I get it.
I had this. I really just enjoy talking about this right now. So there's a book I'm reading right now called The Master Key System. It's by Charles Hannell, and it's largely. So I'll tell you my synopsis. The book is about the power of thought.
Okay.
And aligning your mind with the universal mind.
Okay.
Right. By way of natural laws, right? So in the writing, for a number of reasons, like he writes in a certain style and structure and uses certain references that I don't get.
Okay.
Right? Readily.
Sure.
And maybe if I was around at the time when he wrote this, these references would, connect with me quickly. But I started doing this thing where I would read a passage that I don't understand. I would read it to ChatGPT and then ask it to break it down in the voice and style of Dave Chappelle, Bill Burr. I like comedians because they break down big ass ideas.
And to be a comedian, you have to be very smart.
Right.
Comedy is intelligence.
Yes. And it's like it's that also that articulation of taking these really big ideas and breaking it down to people that are drunk in a dark room. You know what I mean? Like from in whatever part of the world or country, the comedy club is. You know what I mean? But it really, and then I would read the passage again and immediately
and it made sense.
Locked in. Got it.
Interesting.
It was so helpful.
That's a good life hack.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And then I thought about certain people, I thought about the mayor or people that I know that have celebrity or have like public acclaim,
Okay.
whose voice and style, like I've asked it to break stuff down in Raz Baraka's voice, and it does, right? And I'm thinking like, man, if I have enough of my thoughts, writings, speech out in the world that AI could use as a tool, I could ask it to give it back to me in my voice.
Correct.
You know what I mean? And I'm like, man, that's such an ill tool.
Super interesting.
Yeah. Like, because it's the articulation. It's like the connecting from the mouth to the ear part. That's like, or from the mind to the mind part. You know what I mean? But yeah, that book, I got a copy for you actually. It's a brilliant book.
I would love to read it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in you know, in the Black community, being articulate is now seen as like you know, what do you call it? Well, I'm looking for sneak diss and microaggression.
Okay.
A lot of times when a white person says you're articulate, I think Black people now say, oh, it's a microaggression. And I've never felt any way about it. I think it's their way of somehow complimenting you. I think that it becomes a negative thing because it gets handed out so freely if you're a Black person and you can speak without using the Ebonics.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you're articulate. It's like, no, like you're just, you know English.
Right.
You know American English.
Right. Yeah.
But to your point, the articulation factor goes beyond you just being able to know English.
Right.
And not having to use expletives, right?
Yeah. Also, like, you know, we all carry stereotypes from other cultures. Like when you see a white person dance well for the first time, you're like, oh shit.
Facts.
You know what I mean?
Surprised.
Yeah. And it's like, oh.
But the difference is, I've been around white people enough to know that a lot of them can't dance, right?
Yeah.
The proximity that white people have to Black people is very different.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's the difference, I think. It's like, you're surprised because you actually just never been around enough Black people.
Yeah.
I'm surprised because I've actually never seen this happen.
Well, because I've been around quite a few, right?
Exactly.
I dig it. Yeah. But like, you know what I mean? Generally,
I agree with your point, though.
Like I remember like all type of shit. Thinking all Asians know martial arts. Or like whatever the
Kevin
thing
Hart
is.
say, yo, dude slap his knee, I'm out.
That's it, right? You got some stuff with you that I ain't got.
Head it out.
Yeah. What put you in the, or what got you interested in working in finance? Or as the professionals call it, finance?
Finance. I had a professor who was like, he would not answer you if you didn't say finance.
Really?
Oh man, yeah. He gotta say finance. That's how, you know, the people making the real money say it.
Right.
And to this day, I purposely avoid it just to, you know, it's my FU to him. Because it's like, why be so pretentious? Nonetheless. So again, part of it was Pretty Woman. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Got me hooked. But then it was fear.
Okay.
I read a book, I forget what the book's called, but the premise was people do things for one of two reasons, either to attain pleasure or to avoid fear and disappointment.
Okay.
And then the punchline was most of us are doing things for the latter, and it's to avoid fear or disappointment, right? A lot of our decisions are made out of fear. And that was mine. Like I didn't grow up dirt poor. My dad is an immigrant from St. Lucia. My mom is African-American, grew up in a 7-child household. They were very poor.
Gotcha.
Projects in New York.
Yeah.
My father's upbringing wasn't particularly glamorous. But money was always a contentious topic. Like, if I think about top 2 reasons why my parents divorced, money is probably 1 and maybe 2.
Got you.
And so because of that, I was always super conscious that like you need money and we didn't have enough of it. And if we didn't have enough of it, bad things are gonna happen.
Yeah.
And so I remember coming out of college and I was like, yo, like if it was up to me, I would, you know, be a poetry major or like a language arts major and become a journalist and collect my $40K a year and call it a day. But I was thinking about my family as well, and I was like, I don't think it'd be wise of me to make that decision. So I went to finance because they said that's where you make the most money. I also felt like most professions work within the confines of the world, whereas in certain parts of business, you're actually just learning how the world is working, right? So like if you're a nurse, you're like, okay, well I know how to work within the confines of what's happening, but everything is a business. Right. Everything is a transaction. Everything is a sale, right? The other profession I would akin it to is potentially politics. And I would say politics is a bit more artificial than the business side because there's an element of theatrics that needs to be in play. So yeah, I was like, I want to learn how the world works. And I think business can offer that opportunity. It's going to offer me the most money at the time. Well, tech is now, you know, taking over in a lot of ways. And then I tried a couple things and I thought I was good at it.
Yeah.
And I felt validated in that experience. So yeah, I kept going. I used to work easily 80 hours a week, sometimes 90, sometimes 100.
Yeah.
That part sucked.
Yeah.
And I remember one day, my first 2 months in investment banking at Morgan Stanley, I'm sitting at the desk at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, I used to think that the people on Wall Street were just, you know, these rich snobs that got handed everything.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
Not to say anybody deserves to be a billionaire. I don't think anybody deserves to be a billionaire because that amount of money is no.
Okay.
We'll go through an exercise real quick in a second.
Okay.
But nonetheless, I was like, yo, these people are working for their money.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks, oh, you're on Wall Street, you got it by luck. Yo, bro, if I'm up to 3 in the morning, the MD who I have to present to is up till 7 because he's waiting for it. And then he's going to read that joint on his way to a plane to across the world, get off the plane and go to 17 different meetings, get back on a plane and go home.
Right.
So the concept, so once I got into finance, all those things were still true as to why I went in, right? Learning how the world works. By the way, the networking is amazing. I'm in rooms with CEOs at 22, 23, 24-year-old of these big companies. Yeah. And they respect my opinion for one reason or another, right? Like these are really bright minds. So I like the proximity to smart people and intellectual people. Yeah. And then although I didn't love the hours, you do become a different kind of athlete in certain parts of finance when you have that kind of octane. Yeah. Right. Like I'm pushing out 60-page presentations in 2 days, spotless. Right. Yeah. Because they have to be. Yeah. Right. Word. And now it's like, yeah, like I don't work as much as I did, but I have that kind of overdrive, for better or for worse. That's why I have the board position at Seeds, and I'm building out programming for another nonprofit called SEO. Yeah. And I started this men's brand because for better or for worse, I'm now programmed that like, yo, you could do a lot today. Yeah, you can. You can do a lot today.
You can. I think about, you know, in terms of ambition, especially for men. How ambition is such a, I think about ambition like Michael Jordan's in the lane play in the earlier parts of his career. Like Michael Jordan made his name off of layups and dunks.
Yes, okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then when he becomes Michael Jordan and he develops a turnaround fadeaway jumper.
And coined it.
Yeah. And it's like,
and that's his thing.
Yeah. It's like he can still dunk. He can still drive to the lane, but the team needs 2 points. That's what the team needs. You know what I mean? And 2 uncontested points have a better chance at, you know what I mean, scoring than the driving in the lane, getting fouled, whatever, possibly getting injured, right? I think for men, it's like in 20s, like lean into ambition. Lean into the appetite, lean into the amount of energy you have, how long you can stay up, how much you can produce, like lean into that. Because there will come a time where you will need to develop your turnaround fadeaway jumper. You know what I mean?
I like that.
But while you got that,
that's a fact.
Go.
It's true. It's so true. And I'm grateful I did it, man. I mean, because you would hear it all the time, like, all right, yo, it's just going to be 2-3 years of banking. It's just going to be like, just put in the time. And like, whatever, right? That whoever thought it was worthwhile, that's their opinion or not. But now I'm like, I could never go back to
right. Just
that was almost 8 years ago when I started doing that. Yeah. And I'm grateful. And I think the other thing that I, you know, by virtue of growing up with my parents is like, both my parents, very hard workers, had at least 2-3 jobs my whole life. Okay. Again, money was still an issue. So what I learned very young was like, you can either work really hard for a little bit amount of money or work really hard for a lot of money. Yeah. But you're gonna work hard. Yeah. Right? Like that's the consistency that I saw.
Yeah.
So choose your, you know, everybody says it, choose your heart.
Choose your heart. Yeah. So okay, I think I know what it is, but let's do the exercise.
Okay. Oh. So $1 million and $1 billion. Yeah. So the reason why I say like $1 billion is a grotesque amount of money that no one should have. One, because I'm not a billionaire, I'm jealous. That's the first thing. But the second thing is, we say $1 million and $1 billion a lot together because they rhyme. 1 million seconds is 11 days.
Yeah.
And you maybe know the answer because you're a book person. How much time passes with 1 billion seconds?
How much?
33 years.
Yeah.
So
from wait, 1 million is how much?
11 days.
11 days to 33 years.
So when I learned that, I was like, oh, this is too much money. I'm 30 years old today. I haven't been alive for 1 billion seconds relative to a baby that was born 2 weeks ago.
Right.
The difference between me and that baby is astronomical.
Yeah, for sure.
And so once I was able to contextualize that part of it, I was like, oh, no way. And then, of course, you have all the world's problems with the lack of money and all those things. I was like, no, like, I don't care if you are very smart or you have developed a proprietary application that can scale. I don't think anyone should be able to have that amount of money.
So where's the line then? Where should we cap it?
I don't know. I don't know. I think even for me, right, at this age, my financial position is good enough to where, like, I don't necessarily need to try to pop another rank, but I will, right? Because I've been trained to kind of go for more. I think the line is when you reach a point that you are not, your money becomes harmful to other people. I think that's the line. I don't know what equation or economics you need to put that into persuasion.
Yeah.
But
paint that picture for me, like somebody's money becoming harmful to someone else.
So, or someone's money, because then there's a concentration issue, right? So what I mean by that is if you are able to take care of yourself and your family and your loved ones multiple times over, right? I'm not saying people should give up trying to live comfortable, relatively lavish lives. But at a certain point, you know that you don't need the money.
Yeah.
At which point, you're probably also conscious that somebody somewhere does need, not want, need the resources that you have. And so I think once you realize that, there's a decision to be made. And I'll give myself a hard time because I could probably put myself into that equation to an extent. But I can't, because guess what? I haven't retired my mom. Right. My niece is still growing up and needs college. So the things that I'm worried about, no, for myself, I think I'm good, right? I don't necessarily think at this point, there's a floor beneath me in terms of the money that I'll be making unless I decide to do something different, right? But there's still things that are very prevalent in my mind that I actually need. Yeah. But there's a lot of people, I work for them. They don't need anything. Right. I had a conversation with a billionaire once and around college, and we're at dinner. It was me, him, and a friend of mine. And I say his name. I say, hey, you are worth $7 billion. You own this, you own that. Why do you wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning every day to go to work? Right. And you're, in your 60s. Right. And he was pissed. He took his napkin off the table, threw it. Don't ask me no dumb shit like that. You wake up every day, don't you want to be the fucking best? I was like, I think so. He goes, that's why I do it. I wake up because I want to be the best. And that was the point at which I realized I would never be a billionaire. Because it's like, you're wired differently. Like, we just went through the comparison. Okay. And he has 7 of those. Yeah. Yeah. And he still has this hunger. He says it's to be the best, and maybe it is, but I wonder if it's just to be the best, can you do that without the money? If you really just want to be the best at whatever your craft is, you can be the best by other metrics other than money, right?
Yeah, but how much can you step outside of the financial machine and like not charge your fee or not?
You charge whatever you want. I'm just saying give it away.
Or whatever.
I'm just saying give it away.
But at what point is that like perverting your own muscle? You know what I mean?
I mean, you can keep counting different ways. You don't have to own it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And this thing, we're just freeballing here, right? But like if I got to, I think my number I said net worth, if I could be worth 20 M's, 25 M's, I'd be like, all right,
you're good.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm out.
That's the other thing. Like, most people don't have a number.
Yeah, I think mine is 25 right now.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to say mine was 72. It was completely arbitrary. But it was just like, I don't see that as too little. So
yeah.
That number popped in my head. That's the number.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you. Like, there's definitely numerous ways to count.
Yeah, because you could say like, all right, like, I know I have this much of net worth right now.
Mm-hmm.
And because I am who I am and I'm wired, I would like to get to this level of net worth.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, I'm going to give away my money. You count that money. Okay, you gave away $100 million and it's still in a system working somewhere in some community, making more money off itself. Mm-hmm. You count it.
I hear you. Yeah, it's interesting, man. That's like the money thing is so interesting because money is so many different things to so many different people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for some people, it's a report card. For some people, it's validation. For some people, it is the end, and for some people, it's a means to an end.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. But depending on the person, it can be all these things and 50 other things.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. But it's like we're all operating in the same financial system, but we all the commodity isn't the same to all of us.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying?
1,000%. So and that's why you have like the whole like broke mentality or rich mentality, which is like the broke mentality, of course, is to go out and actively work for that money. Right? Because you perceive money to be a bit different.
Yep.
Whereas the people who are going out getting this passive income, they're like, I know what money can do. And I also know my time is actually worth more than that money. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So there's definitely a perception gap between those two mindsets. The other thing I would say that you reminded me of is this concept of like us living and identifying through money. And I will be the first to say I was very guilty of that.
Okay.
And it was a girl, I was dating her. It was my early 20s. And she said to me, she goes, you finance people. You think that your income makes up for your character, and it doesn't.
Okay.
And dropped the mic and left. I was pissed. Mostly because not no one ever, but I'm not used to being a guy that gets got.
Gotcha.
Right? I'm not used to being on the other end of a statement that's like, I don't have a response for this.
Yeah.
But she was right. She was absolutely right. And I don't think I was the world's biggest asshole or anything like that. Okay. But again, you grow up money hungry. You understand that money brings in all these good things for people. You put yourself to, I went to boarding school, then I went to high school. I'm sorry, then I went to college. Then I worked at Morgan Stanley for 4 years, working all these crazy hours for money. So in a lot of ways, it did become, how I thought of my success, myself. And a lot of men do that too. And one of the things that I try to help men with now in my Masculine Lies workshops is like, the money is an output, actually. It's not the input.
Right.
The thing that allows you to get the money is the fact that you can be a motivational speaker, you can be creative, you can be organized, right? So that's the value package. Somebody's just putting a number on that, and then now we perceive that number to be our value. It's like, no, what gave you that ability in the first place is your true value, right? Those intrinsic skills that you have. But when she said that, man, I mean, I'm not gonna say it was a day and night switch, but it definitely stewed in my mind. And now the things that give me most fulfillment when I think of identity actually is not attached to money at all.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, not even a little bit.
Yeah.
Like,
would you say that it's the person that you're constantly creating yourself to be
that gives me the fulfillment?
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. There's a big capitalism allows you to drive towards just optimization is how I would say. Like, we're consistently like, we got to optimize, we got to optimize.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that for a lot of us, that rat race in the professional life then turns into the personal side too, or at least it should. And so, I am always trying to optimize for like better qualities of myself. I know there are a lot of things that I get completely wrong and I need to work on.
Okay.
But But I remember I talked to a friend of mine a few months ago, and she's British, brilliant woman, one of the smartest people I know. And we have this heart-to-heart because we hadn't seen each other in a while.
Okay.
And I was telling her all the things that I felt like I needed to improve. And she goes, man, aren't you tired? Like, aren't you exhausted of always having to like do something else or be better? Like, why can't you just be enough for yourself in this moment? I was like, shit, again, second time in my life that a woman has left me like. I forget my train of thought, but I say that all to say, I do like the idea of self-improvement. And so that does bring me fulfillment, but it's also kind of the concept of seeing other people improve themselves. And so I think, you know, I'm still very young, right? But as you start to achieve certain things, your white space gets smaller and smaller, right? Like when I was 11 years old, high school was the goal. Right? Basketball,
the mountaintop.
Making a basketball team was the goal. College, right? And so you look back and like, okay, well, I've done all these things. Granted, there's still a lot more, but as you start to achieve those things, like that optimization, hopefully the space should dwindle. And so then what do you have? You can only then base yourself off of, well, what can I do to help other people improve and be their best selves, which is why the idea of legacy is so important. And so, I do find that I definitely get pleasure and fulfillment from me improving. But at the same time, I get a lot of pleasure from seeing other people, older or younger. If I can add value to your life, that's my shit.
That makes me now want to have a conversation about gratitude. Like, what's your relationship with gratitude?
Inconsistently consistent.
Ebbs and flows.
It definitely ebbs and flows. You know, you have the months on end where I'm waking up and I'm saying my daily affirmations and I'm being grateful for the things. And then you have the moments where I'm not intentionally being grateful and you see or hear about someone who's had a very unfortunate event happen. And it forces you to be grateful for the things you have. I definitely can make it more incessant. I think I do tend to think about what needs to be done better more than I think about the gracious part of it.
Gratitude is very much a central pillar for me at this place in life. And I'm really exploring it more and using it more as a tool. And one of the things that I appreciate about gratitude is that gratitude is like air. It's always there. It's always accessible. You know what I mean? And, you know, speaking of affirmations, like I have this daily practice that I do. Like I write down life goals for my character. Right? And one of the things that I write down is I give first and with gratitude. And I receive from the law of reciprocity and compensation. Like it is not about the transaction. There is a law of reciprocity and compensation that if I give, I will receive, right? So it's important to give first. It's important to not feel the need to receive first or be filled up first. You know what I mean? And then the gratitude part is like, if I'm in a conversation or a thought about giving, apparently I have something to give. Apparently, to some degree, I'm full or filled.
You know if you have space to give something.
If I have space to think about giving something.
That's an important part too. People like Maslow's hierarchy, right? Like some people don't have the ability to think about higher concepts.
So it's always accessible. And then when I sit down and be still and thinking about like, what am I grateful for? Like I try to do it when I first wake up. Just 3 things off the top of my head that I'm grateful for upon waking up. But at any point, especially if I find myself in a sour mood, like it's such a quick flip of like, all right, what am I genuinely grateful for? And a lot of times the sour mood was evidence of just my attention was in the wrong place. That's all. Like that thing isn't life. That thing is just where my attention was.
Correct.
It's all this other life in all other directions and within. And I could turn my attention in so many other directions in gratitude, and that thing is not even worth thought anymore.
I agree.
You know what I mean? So like gratitude is so productive. Like it keeps producing.
Well, you know, it's interesting when you say like gratitude is like air is everywhere. I think it's also kind of, again, back to the econ and business stuff. It's also then for folks who don't use it.
Yeah.
It's like the idea of like supply and demand, right? Something becomes less valuable with the more supply that is out there.
Yeah.
So for some people, gratitude isn't as valuable because they can be accessed at any point in time, right?
Yeah.
So they're not going to access it. Whereas the things that we are likely thinking about are typically the things that are not available to us at any given point in time, right? And that's the thing that we tend to actually focus our attention on, which then means that those things thus have more value to us.
Yeah. It's like the archetype of trust fund kids. It's like they're not grateful because they've always had plenty. They've always had abundance. They've always had provision. It's
Can't
like,
value anything.
It's the very thing that you should be grateful for. It's like, oh, you don't see any of this stuff as like worth acknowledgement and, you know what I mean, gratitude. But thankfully, I'm not a trust fund kid. So
true. It's always it's a rose and a thorn though, right? I'm like, well, I kind of want that trust fund. But you know, with it, you would not have the character that you have.
Yeah.
Right. So it's always, and I say that all the time. Like, you know, people are like, what's it like growing up in North New Jersey? I wouldn't change it.
Right.
I love it.
Right.
The edge, the self-awareness, just being in the East Coast. Actually, I think
that too. Yeah.
There's a certain swagger that I think we all carry. A certain amount of self-awareness.
Yeah.
You're not gonna get got.
a certain speed of thought.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and then to the point of like just kind of self-actualization and getting better. If you were born at, certain mountaintops, like, I don't know if everything would all be worth it.
Right. And like,
it could be. I don't know. I don't have that life. Well, hopefully I can talk to my kids and ask them what they think.
I was having a conversation with my brother. Yeah, right. I was having a conversation with my brother. We talk about this type of stuff a lot. And we were talking about how you take I can't believe I'm gonna take the conversation here, but
let's go.
You take a Donald Trump who grew up in provision his entire life, right? Or a trust fund kid. We were talking about Donald Trump in particular. But part of the reason why he's so socially abhorrent is that he has lived a life from childhood that didn't require the performative nature of socialization that the rest of us are so used to. He could grow up and say the truth a lot.
And nothing would happen.
Nothing's gonna happen, right? And it's like there is the genuine experience of how you are perceived not being strong enough to impact your future. Like so-and-so can't not like me and block me.
Yeah, correct.
Some people grow up, and that's the truth for them.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? And so they don't have to develop these like social refinements.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? And I would not want to be one of those people. Like I want to be this person who grew up in this environment where I've developed these awarenesses of other people's perceptions. And I don't care about how you think about me.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate having a more nuanced understanding of other people and other people's mentalities and other people's norms and other people's expectations and how the recipe actually works.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
And how and why my ingredient works so well in the recipe.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
I can see that point.
Like I dig that. I dig that I've developed and been given these attributes and character traits and whatnot by way of how I came up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And inclusive of what I didn't have.
It has to be.
Yeah.
It has to be. Yeah.
So it's like, I choose this for sure over like being a trust fund kid. but I'll ask my kids about what that's like.
Yeah, exactly. And because you're absolutely right. I'm always like, I don't.
Yeah.
Something skeeves me out sometimes around certain cohorts, which again is not necessarily against every trust fund kid, but the ones that I've come in contact with, I'm just like, oh, something's a little off. That candidly, I'm glad I don't have the ability to manufacture myself. But yeah, identity through money is a big topic that I used to think about a lot. Identity through gender, right? Like when you're born, whether you have a male reproductive part or a female reproductive part, you now are a part of a social contract. Yeah. Most of us are not conscious that we're a part of that contract. Right. Which then means that most of us are practicing the social contract unconsciously.
Yeah, blindly. Yeah.
And so with that concept, I probably within only the last 2 years have given myself a license to dissect what masculinity or manhood might be to me. Okay. Which, by the way, honestly, I'll say this too. The two aren't congruent. People think that masculine means man, and feminine means woman, and it's not, right? But for simplicity's sake, we'll go there. And what I found, again, the name of the business is Masculine Lies, because what I found is that the attributes that are given to us as to what it is to be man, a lot of times are detrimental to what it is to be a human. Yeah. And further, no one possesses all of those attributes. When I do my workshops with men, one of the exercises we do is we say, okay, like, we'll put like man up on the board, and I'll ask, like, what does it mean to be a man in this society, or whatever the case may be. You don't throw out the stuff, oh, you have to be apathetic, you have to have a lot of money, you have to be a provider, you have to be a ladies' man, you have to be heterosexual, you have to eat protein, you can't be overly expressive, you can't compliment another guy, right? And we go through all, you got to have a big, package. You got to be able to put it down 5 ways to heaven, whenever somebody needs it, right? All these things. That's what they tell us, right? We read, sound good, sound good. 17 dissecting it, right? As babies, right? As babies, and then you see the echo chamber when you look at a sports documentary, or you read the Bible. Some people pervert the Bible to have their ways in terms of gender norms. All that being said is we'll put all this stuff on the board. And then the question is, so raise your hand if you possess all these attributes. Right. No one. Right. Never. Right. I've done dozens of the sessions. No one's ever raised their hand. Which then reinforces the concept that they're not true. Yeah. It's all superficial. Yep. So identity in that sense to me has taken on a really big shift in my life, because I now know that I can challenge what even the most fundamental parts of our supposed identities are, right? Yeah. Because fundamentally, if you know you're a man or a woman, it's fundamental, right? Yeah. And you can challenge that. Right. Now, how far you challenge it, that's for everyone else, right? I challenge it to the degree that I am no longer harming myself by being in that, arena. Gotcha. And the people that I'm around. Yeah. Yeah, I think about this time period and particularly Black men, in the 30 to 50 age range. It's like, never before has it been so common that Black men tell each other, I love you. Like among friend groups. I love it. Among siblings, among cousins. Like, not just, you're my favorite cousin. Like, saying I love you is like a normal thing now, has become a normalized thing now. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think, like, I believe that not in every generation, but definitely like from, say, the 90s moving forward, like, I'm the man of my mother's generation's dreams. I have... I can see the dynamic, you know what I mean? Part of you. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I have this masculinity and these attributes, and I also have these others that my mother's generation was just desperate for them. Can you please, Harold? Right? Can you talk to me? Right? And it's like, and it's going to be the same for the next generation. It's like, it's going to be... My son is going to be perfect for right now. Correct. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I agree with you, man. Like that
that ability to reframe the definitions becomes an obligation to reframe the definition. Because like, well, if
when
you
see
know
the
that
harm
it's
being
not
done without it,
you know it's not plastic, you know it's not static, then your job is to mold it for the sake of your betterment and the betterment of the people around you and the betterment of society and the world. It's like you have to take it upon yourself to design your expression of masculinity.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying?
Correct.
And you can.
No one's stopping
Fortunately, you can.
No one's stopping you.
Yeah.
And the more that's what I guess that famous line in Coach Carter is about. It's like the more you give yourself license to shine, you permission everyone else to do the same around you.
Yep.
Which is why I'm like very proud of like some of the guys that I work with on a day to day, because it's like, yo, who told us that we had to do this?
Yeah.
And once you get it, you get it.
Yeah.
Right. Like once you actually realize, well, actually, nobody told me to do any. Well, I listen to it, but I don't have to.
Right.
And I think that kind of also, even thinking about religion, a lot of people base their identity off of their religion.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying one is better or another, but I'm just saying that becomes identity for a lot of people.
Yep.
And granted, I think religion has a lot of amazing qualities for like just structurally how you live your life. You get organization, you get a routine, you get some really great, integrity-based values, right?
Yeah.
But then if someone questions it, you're so quick to
the dogma part of it,
because it's your identity.
Yeah.
Right? Like you don't consider it them questioning the religion or the whatever you're reading. You're questioning me.
Yes.
And you're speaking poorly about me. And it's like, no, if we have the ability to kind of separate ourselves from certain structures that told us our identity were in them.
Yep.
You just might think about things a little differently.
Yeah, yeah.
And look, all this is cute because we're on a podcast, right?
Yeah, word.
It's all cute. It's all nice to say. I'll be right. It's very hard to implement.
Yeah.
It's really hard to implement.
Right. There's not a domino that's gonna fall off this conversation. So it's super cute. Yeah.
This is perfect. We got answers. You want answers? I got answers.
Yeah. It's funny. A young man approached me the other day. He had to be a teenager. I don't know exactly how old, but I call it 16. Right. And he asked me, do I know, basically like, do I know who Jesus is? Do I have a relationship with Jesus? And then he, carried on. And
where were you?
Halsey Street.
Okay. That's
coming out of Whole Foods. Right. And he started to have a conversation. He had a Bible in his hand, or at least some translation of a Bible. Or it wasn't thick enough to be a Bible, so maybe it was just the New Testament.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
New Testament Christians.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm lying. Sorry, that was.
But like, he's like, he's not a Mormon, he's not a Jehovah's Witness, he's just a kid on the street. You know what I'm saying? And he's doing this thing. And, at a certain point I realized, like, okay, this is not and never was a conversation.
Yeah, it was him giving you what you need to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he said to me, he was like, can I pray for you? And I was like, of course you can pray for me. You can pray for me anytime. He's like, well, can I pray for you right now? It's like, you can pray for me. You can't pray with me. But you can pray for me. Right? Because at that point I realized, like, no disrespect to him, but you're masturbating on me now. And I'm not interested in being present for that.
I don't get it.
Like the idea is, you believe that you have all of the godliness to share with me.
Yeah, you create the artificial righteousness kind of thing.
Yeah. And it's like, all right, well, we're gonna stop there because I have too high of regard for prayer to let you fuck around and masturbate through prayer, right?
I get it now.
But as I'm walking away, I was like, and you can still pray for me, by the way.
Yeah.
Because nothing has interrupted that.
Correct.
But it's just the idea that like
it was like self-pleasing for him.
Yeah, like he went out to come back home feeling better about himself.
Yeah,
which is like, I get it. Like you're filled with your experience. You know what I mean? You're filled with the Spirit. You're filled with, this sense of obligation to preach and to share. And it's like, all right.
Yeah. It's funny because I have a few things to say. One, I grew up Christian. Mm-hmm. My dad is Catholic. My mom is Baptist, Pentecostal. Okay. Somewhere in that subsector of Christianity. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I grew up mostly with my mom. We were in church 4 or 5 days a week because you had church on Sunday. Yep. She had choir rehearsal on Monday. Yeah. We had prayer on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. Then me and my sister had choir rehearsal on Wednesday. Mm-hmm. Then you had Bible study on Thursday. Yep. So I very much so understand, I think, the experience of a lot of American Christians. Yeah. And what's present in the Black community. Yeah. And I got to high school. I went to boarding school again, so I was outside of Newark. Mm-hmm. And I had this class as a junior called World Religions. And we're studying Hinduism, we're studying Buddhism, we're studying Islam. And of course, growing up in a Christian church, you weren't really allowed to look at that stuff because it's not
it's true. All pagan.
It's all pagan. Yeah. And I took some likings to certain things. Certain things I was like, oh, you can kind of keep it. But point was, everything felt so true at that point. Because it's like, well, how do we have so many cultures believing same way I believe in this guy, Jesus, you believe so much so that he's not the way to salvation. Right. And it stumped me for such a long time that I kind of walked away from the whole religious concept altogether. I went to college, did my thing, the world, Western culture was my new religion, as people say, which is the biggest religion. Yeah. Long story short, Thanksgiving 2022, I started to tap into different sources like, what is the guy, 40 Keys or
19 Keys?
19 Keys, sorry, I apologize. Yeah. 19 Keys, the other guy, Forbidden Knowledge. And Ben Carson. So these things, from, again, an academic perspective, which I've always considered myself to be an academic, and it was like, this is intellectually stimulating. Because there had to be some other kind of answers and concepts. Long story short, I went through all of this. My point is, like, I've kind of tried to experience certain things to figure out what my true north is. And I actually think I'm at a place right now where I do have a true north spiritually. And it still comes from the Bible, but it's not based in the same doctrine that Christians preach. I hear you. And one of the ways in which I've looked to separate myself from that doctrine while still believing in the same text that Christians have is by using the proper name of Jesus. Right? Once I figured out this guy's name was Yahshua, I was like, wait a second. Right. I told you I was in church for 4 to 5 days a week. For at least 15 years. Yep. And nobody said this? Nobody said this to me. Yeah. And again, going back to the Newark identity, I was like, I feel like I got. I feel like somebody got me.
Yeah, that was one of the points that came up in the conversation with him. Because I was like, I asked him, like, what was Jesus' name? And he's like, oh, you mean, he's like, probably Yeshua. And I was like, do you not think it's significant that the person who said that it was to his name that every knee would bend, whose name would be changed? I'm like, your name is, and he told me his name, and I was like, all right, in another language, is your name still that, or is it? He's like, well, my name is my name. I was like, exactly. So why wouldn't his name be his name?
Yeah, name. And it's the name, right?
And it's the name.
And you read the Bible, it says there's one door, there's one way, there's one truth, so probably one name.
So like there's parts where like the dogma and the doctrine compete with themselves. Because like you're telling me this thing, but then you're telling me this thing. Yeah. And they don't work together.
Correct.
And
then, so I used to have, sorry to cut you off, because those types of concepts would come up a lot for me in the church. Yep. And then, of course, like all of us do, we try to articulate the question. And typically it's met with an answer that was not sufficient for me. Or we then move to the faith part of the equation.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, don't think too mumuch about that because, it's a part of this bigger philosophy that we can't really see or capture. And that pissed me off.
Yeah. Because it's like a get out of jail free card.
Yes, correct.
And so you can use that on anything.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, I grew up Jehovah's Witness. My family was Jehovah's Witnesses growing up.
Jehovah.
It was like a lot of the same thing. It was like there were certain aspects that were, you are questioning. By questioning the doctrine, you're questioning the authenticity of God himself and his chosen means of communication or structure or what have you, because we're saying that this is right and righteous in totality.
No blemish.
All right, well, then there's there is an intentionally developed cognitive dissonance in order to sustain this doctrine. And it's like, that's not gonna fly for everybody, man. Sorry.
It really isn't. And then people say, oh, you're being difficult. I'm like, no, I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah.
But even Yeshua, I would even say that's not the proper name. And I like proof points. I like proofs. I do believe, don't get me wrong, I do believe faith is still, spirituality is still part of faith.
Absolutely.
But I also believe that, and the Bible says this too, it says he's given us a sufficient amount of intelligence and physical things to understand the spiritual. Right? So it's not just believe it to believe it. He's like, no, you have to be able to understand certain concepts, precept upon precept, for you then to make that jump of, okay, well, faith-wise, I think I could get there because there's certain things that actually just make sense intellectually to me, the person, to me, the flesh, to me, the physical human being. And so one of the proof points about Yeshua versus Yahshua, so Yahshua, Yahshua, the Father's name is Yahweh. So when you read the Bible and Jesus says, I come in my Father's name, right? Let another come in his name and you receive them, but you receive me not. How does Jesus sound like Yahweh? Right. Okay, maybe how does Jesus even sound like God if that's his name? How did you? But when you put Yahshua with Yahweh, okay, now I can see the Father's name. Just like I bear my Father's name. And then the translation of Yahshua is Yahweh is salvation. And so now I'm like, okay, now I can start to look at this new doctrine that I'm studying with a little bit more legitimacy because things just kind of make sense to me naturally.
There's a guy, I forget his name. I'll send you like a clip once I find it. I have it saved in my phone. He's an African gentleman. And a lot of the time his conversation points are about like how the Christianization and Westernization of Black people is our greatest downfall. And it's like, he talked about how in this one video, how the letter J doesn't show up in the alphabet until I think 500 years ago.
Yeah, 1,500 years, 2,000 years after Yahshua died.
Right. So it's like, so how could that be the first letter of his name if the letter doesn't exist?
The last letter in the English alphabet.
You know what I'm saying?
Last one.
Right. And it's like, and it's the same way.
Not Z.
Right. It's not. Right. But it's like these things, it's not so much, it's not just that these gaps and disconnects exist. It's also the learning of how much planning and orchestration went into creating the name Jesus. You know what I mean? And by extension, the name Jehovah. It's like, wait a minute. You're telling me that Jehovah is translated from Yahweh. But then you also tell me that in Hebrew, at the time of Moses writing, they didn't write vowels. So it was the pronunciation was only from spoken. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, all right, that part of it creates some gaps in my, ability to comprehend. Fine.
Sure.
But then to find out like how much the Catholic Church
manipulated the whole thing.
Yeah, like created this idea and this construct of Christianity and Christendom. And for what purposes? And it's
conquest.
Like, we're not even just having a faith conversation in the first place.
Alexander the Great.
Yeah.
Political game.
Like, this is like, it's the same as missionaries going into, some remote island. So it's the same thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know, man.
No, man, it's a lot. And sorry, I could riff on that for a little bit. But, and again, like I say this from a place where people are like, well, you think you know everything. I know I'm flawed.
Yeah.
I know I got a lot of stuff that I got to fix. Mm-hmm. But my desire to find truth is not going to be stifled by the culture's stubbornness.
Right.
Because we do, again, it's just unconscious, right? Like I did all these, I was, identified as a player at one point in my life because I was a man, and that's what they gave me unconsciously. And then I would raise my voice in arguments because I was a man, and that's how you show force, right? And so I exhibited all these things that I'm talking about now. And the same is true in Christianity, right? Like, you're going through an unconscious walk because it's what you've been taught.
Yep.
Tyler, the Creator, has a song, I forget the name of it, but he starts off, he goes, that ain't your real religion. That's your mama's religion. She got it from your mammy who got it from master.
Yeah.
And like, everybody wants to say like, it's not a black and white conversation. And sure, I'll even give you that, fine. But are you not at least going to be critical of the information you're being given?
Yeah.
So if I talk to a woman, you're right, if I talk to a woman who's a Christian black woman and I tell her how I've gone through this progression from being a relatively stereotypical man to being a less stereotypical man by virtue of my unlearnings of certain things and questioning different identities that have been instituted for centuries. She can get behind that because, oh yeah, you're becoming the man that we want you to be, and you now know how to put away certain toxic habits.
Yeah.
But now if I take that same conversation and say, well, also I apply that same rhetoric to my Christian upbringing, where I question that too, and the truth that I'm finding in here is actually fulfilling my soul more than what I had in Christianity. Yeah. But she's Christian.
Yeah.
You got watch what you say. You're doing too much now. Yeah.
Word.
And so my thing is really like, I question everything.
Yeah.
Myself included.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, indeed.
So
yeah, because the truth is the only thing that can sustain questioning.
Fair.
Like, if it's true, it's true. It's like north is north.
And it's always going to be true.
Yeah.
That's the other thing I never understood about certain Christian communities. Because, so as I was studying, so I go to a class, it's called IDMR. I think that's what it's called. Forgive me if it's not. But a man from college introduced me to this class almost 2 years ago. Same time, I actually had just developed my faith in Christianity because I felt like I was going off the rails a little bit in my life, and I was like, "There's a foundational shift that's happening, and if I don't get it now, it might be too late." So I recommitted myself back to the church. I went to a different church than what I grew up to, and I went to a church where I felt like there was at least amount of hypocrisy that I could find within the Christian community. And for what it was at the time, fantastic. I was abstinent at that point in time. I felt like I had a community of young people that were excited about salvation and doing the right things. A lot of really good positives that come from it. Yeah. And I started going to this other class, and I was comparing, because I always do that. I compare stuff. And I would learn certain here and go back to here, question this, and vice versa. The class said to me, "That's amazing, you came back with that question. Here's our answer. Study it for yourself. If we're wrong, let us know. But keep coming up with more questions." Yeah. The church effectively kicked me out.
Right.
They said after a certain amount of time, one of the deacons who I actually really loved as a mentor. Again, I'm learning a lot of things in a conscious way about my spirituality. Yeah. And one day he calls me with the guy who introduced me to that church. Yeah. Also went to college with him, two different people. And they're like, "Yo, you know you don't have to come anymore, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I know." I said, "But I like coming because here are the things that I'm getting from it, right?" And it was true. It was very genuine. Yeah. And I enjoy comparing the two. And they're like, "No, like you don't have to come anymore." So now I'm like, oh, y'all just... Yeah. And again, going back to I gotta get rid of it. I don't like being. I'm gonna say what you want to say to me. Tell me I can't come back. Don't gaslight me to be like I'm making this decision on my own.
Word.
And they wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
And I felt hurt.
Yeah, right? Yeah, of course.
And so, with that being said, I'm not church hurt, right? Like I felt hurt by that individual, those people, because I was like, yo, we've been banging each other for a year now. I've been in your house every week learning. You offer me food. I watched your kids. Like,
yeah, word.
You know, like, but point being about the truth being the truth, there was one group of people who said, yo, we got the truth, and we're so confident it's the truth that we want you to go out and explore everything else. Just so you can come back and be like, nah, like, they had it right. Where the other group is like, you know, whatever you're saying might impede what we're saying, but the truth is the truth. Why are we afraid of something?
Right. Yeah.
But my experiences.
Last thing I want to ask you about.
Yeah.
What's your relationship with death?
Ooh. I've never been asked that. Ironic, because of the spiritual conversation we were just having. I've been fortunate, and I've said this time and time again. I have not experienced a very pivotal death in my life so far.
Got you.
And I hope, forgive me, Mom, my grandmother's passed away. But, you know, I didn't grow up with her alive. And the stories that I heard about her weren't amazing stories.
Okay.
Even towards my mom, right? Okay. So, love my mom. She's a very jovial person, big smile all the time. She grew up in really crappy conditions because of my grandmother, who also had her shit, right? It's all a cycle.
Yep.
But so not particularly close to my grandmother to be like, oh my God, my life's falling apart.
Yeah.
On my father's side, my grandfather's dead. Also not close to him. He grew up in St. Croix.
Okay.
My mom's father died before she became alive. So I haven't had that experience yet. And so I kind of almost in like this concept of energy can never be destroyed is present. So when I think of death, yes, I do believe in the afterlife. I do believe in the concept of like salvation and spending eternity somewhere.
Okay.
And I would say, because I am still indoctrinated, because again, my source is the Bible. And I can juxtapose what's being said in the Bible to what my life actually looks like. And I will say I'm afraid to die at this point. Okay. Based on my spiritual beliefs about what that leads to based on my lifestyle. So I don't know. That's kind of my thought.
I dig it. Yeah, I dig it. Yeah, I think that's probably one of the, at least in my observation, one of the greatest testaments to a person's maturity is their relationship with death changing. Either by way of, you know, the idea of losing loved ones or the idea of their own mortality. You know what I mean? And whatever the implications are.
Yeah.
You know, it is the one thing that no one has the answer to. We are all walking on faith when it comes to the conversation of death. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody, no matter how adamant somebody is about their vote for what it is.
Correct. There's no proof in that, right?
There is none.
You can't prove it.
Yeah.
Can't prove it.
And like, it's also the, you know, to your earlier point, it's like one of those things that our fear of is such a pillar for like how we live, how we do the alive thing. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, my mom is so scary, bro.
Yeah.
She don't want me to step outside the house.
Right.
I'm like, what's the point?
Right.
I'm like, I gotta do something.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I'm a little reckless at times. But yeah, no, that's actually a really good point. Idea of death. Yeah, I don't think it changed at one point because again, when I walked away from religion altogether, it was like, I'm just out here, right? And like, I'm a good dude.
Yeah.
I still always believed in the afterlife, but I was like, it wasn't based on much else other than me thinking I'm a good dude and things gonna be fine.
Yeah.
I think as I've kind of, again, gotten more proof points for certain concepts in the Bible being real and actually being able to apply it to our actual lives, like literally being able to apply it. Like even certain things, small things like Joshua dies at 33 years old. We have 33 vertebrae in our body.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the metaphysics of it, right? It gives me support. And so now that I have some more conviction in the Bible, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I should start living my life a bit differently.
I dig it. Yeah. I hear you. Word. Yo, man, thank you so much for coming through, bro.
Thank you for letting me come through, man.
My man, truly.
This is great.
Yeah. We'll do it again sometime, too.
I would love to. And it's funny because I've been trying to figure out this podcast for my men's brand, and I've been overthinking it. And I just showed up fresh from work. We just sat down.
Yo, it's a lot easier now.
Yeah.
We live in the future.
I've been doing all this extra stuff for no reason.
I tell folks often, like, the worst thing you can do when you're trying to start a podcast is to try to make it look like a podcast. Like trying to get the radio station mics and the 3 camera angles and the, you know what I mean? Like
spinning a band on a pod.
Yeah, like
3, 4, 5 bands later.
We live in the future.
You got one episode.
Word. That you don't want to put out because the lighting was bad.
Yo, that's facts.
Word up. Nah, for sure.
This is great.